Hmm. Hi. I've been working with my light because I want you to be able to see the picture and also both sides of my face. So far, one side of my face has been bright because I have a lamp over here, and the other side's been kind of like the dark side of the moon. But I think now you can see enough of my face. And besides, really in this story, the pictures are more important. So, I'm going to read you a story I wrote a while back called Farmer Brown's Menagerie. Now, you probably don't know the word menagerie. It's a pretty long word. It's about this long, I'd say, menagerie. It's just a big long word for kind of a zoo or something like that. A bunch of animals. So you can see Farmer Brown's a farmer. He's going into his barn in that picture. Now, let me let you know in advance, this story has some scary animals in it. Not dinosaurs, no. Tigers. I'm not going to tell you anymore, actually. I'll surprise you. But the thing is, I didn't make a picture of those animals, so you're going to have to put the pictures up here in your head. You can imagine the animals. So, with that, let's go on with the story. There's Farmer Brown, as I told you. Farmer Brown's Menagerie. Farmer Brown woke up at the crack of dawn, washed his face, pulled on his overalls, gulped down a cup of coffee, and went outside in the bright early morning sun with his bucket in his hand to go in the barn and milk his tigers. Ha! Bet I fooled you there. An hour or so later, Farmer Brown was lying all battered and bruised on the ground, and every single muscle in his body was aching him. But in front of him on the ground was his great big aluminum pail of fresh white tiger's milk. Hmm. Farmer Brown was not able to lie there and rest for very long either, because by the time the sun got big at the no, not big, it's getting smaller. By the time the sun got to the top of the sky that day at noon, he had to get over to a different part of his farm, over by the river, so he could collect the eggs from underneath his crocodiles. Ha! Bet you thought I was going to say chickens. Well, an hour after noon, you could again find Farmer Brown lying on the ground. This time he was feeling like all his bones were broken. But around him on the ground were his big bucket of tiger's milk and a great big basket of those huge white crocodile eggs. Farmer Brown scratched his head. I never knowed being a farmer was supposed to be this hard, he said to himself. But he still did not have the time to sit there for very long, because before the sun went down in the sky that evening, he had to get over to still a different part of his farm, over where the big trees were, so he could shear the wool off of his gorillas. Ha! He thought I was going to say sheep. Usually we get sheep from wool. Just before sunset, Farmer Brown was again lying stretched out on the ground, feeling like every bone in his body had been crushed into powder. But around him in a circle were his big bucket of tiger's milk, his great big basket of crocodile eggs, and a great big bag full of the very finest gorilla wool that they can make clothes out of. Farmer Brown picked himself up and got up from the ground, and as he did so, he said to himself, "It's not supposed to be this hard. I must be doing something wrong." And with the tiger's milk in one hand and the eggs cradled on his chest and the bag of gorilla wool around his shoulder, he slowly walked off towards home as the beautiful sun went down in the sky. Well, gotta change our picture. Let's see here. Sorry. There we go. Ta-da-da-da. Let's see if it's still, yeah, you can still see it good. Well, the next morning, Farmer Brown did not get up to milk his tigers. Instead, he got in his pickup truck and he drove all the way across the county to go visit his best friend, Henry. He and Henry had been friends since they were both boys. Henry was sitting on his front porch in his rocking chair when he saw Farmer Brown coming up the steps. "Morning, Farmer Brown," said Henry. "Hello, Henry," shouted Farmer Brown, and when Farmer Brown got a little closer, Henry said, "Farmer Brown, what happened to you? You look beat." "I must be getting old, Henry," said Farmer Brown. "Every morning, by the time I finish milking my tigers, collecting the eggs from underneath my crocodiles, and shearing the wool off my gorillas, I'm all tired out." Henry's mouth opened wide, and he looked at Farmer Brown with so much surprise that you might have thought his whole head was going to pop off his neck and shoot up into space. "You ain't getting old, Farmer Brown," said Henry when he could talk again. "You just made a little mistake. Tigers and crocodiles and gorillas, they ain't farm animals. Those are jungle animals. Sometimes people put them in zoos, but they don't belong on a farm." Now it was Farmer Brown's turn to open his mouth wide. His forehead wrinkled and his eyes got a wild look. "Well, I'll be," he finally said. "Well, I know. See, that's it. So that's it. I knowed I was doing something wrong." Well, Henry made lunch for the two of them, and they ate, had a good time talking about the old days. Then, when they were done, Farmer Brown got back in his pickup truck and he drove home all the way across the county. When he got to the front gate of his own farm, where he had a big sign, "Farmer Brown's Farm," Farmer Brown's farm, he got out of his truck. Yeah, there you go. He got out of his truck and he got out his great big magic marker. And he crossed out the word farm and he wrote in zoo. And then he wrote $5 admission charge to get in. Well, Farmer Brown started having visitors from all over the county who had seen that sign, and they wanted to see his wild animals, and they paid good money to get in too. Now every morning Farmer Brown could get up bright and early, gulp down a cup of coffee, pull on his overalls, and walk outside with his bucket in his hand into the barn and milk his cows, then collect the eggs from under his chickens and shear the wool off of his sheep, and still have plenty of energy left for the rest of the day. And Farmer Brown lived happily ever after with all his farm and zoo animals. And that's the end of Farmer Brown's Menagerie. Thank you for listening, everybody. See you next time for another story or song. Have a great afternoon.